Hi everyone, thank you for coming to the final panel discussion of the 22nd Annual International Ocean Film Festival. We saved the best for last, so thank you all for being here. The mission of the festival and the foundation is to really bring ocean stories to our communities, our children, and these fine folks that we have up here are a big part of that. If you are inspired by our message, there's a QR code on the back of your program to donate to the foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. It's a beautiful day outside, so I know you have other things you could be doing, but I appreciate that you've come to listen on a Sunday afternoon. How many people saw the film last night? Did anybody not see the film yet? Oh, interesting. It's a very interesting observation of the sort of talking about the film and the ins and outs and where it was origin from and what's happened since. So I think a lot of you saw the film last night and hopefully felt very emotionally moved by the message of it. So we're going to talk about that today over the next hour or so. And do questions as well. I think it's a small enough group that if you have something you'd like to ask any of the folks on the panel, please put your hand up and we can do that, right? We're allowed to do questions? Oh, we can do questions. So feel free to be interactive. We also, just to give you a shout out, we also have the founder and the CEO of Yulex in the audience here, Jeff and Liz, who are instrumental in so many ways, but they're certainly a prominent feature of the second half of the film. But they are also a prominent story about how all this transpired and where it's going forward. And we'll actually touch a little bit on the origin of the Patagonia and Yulex, how it all came together in 2013, because it's a fascinating story. So we have some extra people who can add some weight if and when we need. Okay, so we'll kick off. We're just going to have a general conversation around the film. And I think for those that didn't catch the end yesterday around the origin story, I think it's interesting to touch in on that. And then spend a little bit of time talking about what's happened since the film came out. And many may not realize that the film first came out 2 years ago, so we'll talk a bit about what's happened in 2 years since, the new edit, the response from the public, the response from media, surf industry, etc. Talk a little bit about Patagonia's role in bringing this topic to the forefront and other brands since, and then Sarah will be able to talk a lot about sort of the inspiration behind making the film, how that's changed you, what you're doing about that, and the relevance to the film in your life as well. So we've got a lot to talk about. We could probably go for days, but we'll go for the next hour or so, if that's fine. So why don't we kick off? Well, once again, it's a beautiful film. It's changed my life, certainly professionally and personally. We can get to my story about how I am things differently, having first seen the film. But tell us the origin story. Like, what made you spend all the effort you've done to bring this film to the public?
Hello, is that working?
Yeah.
Okay. So my name is Chris Nelson, and I'm one of the filmmakers behind the film. I'm a lifelong surfer. Grew up surfing on the East Coast in the UK, which is really, really cold. We surf through the winter, that's the best time for surfers. So wetsuits were an integral part, kind of growing up there. And, over the years, I've probably had about 50 wetsuits. So obviously been a consumer of neoprene. And then this story about the link between neoprene and Cancer Alley kind of first came to light in The Guardian. They did a year-long expose about the region and about the pollution and the dengue plant. But nobody really talked about neoprene. It was all talking about chloroprene and the effect that the chloroprene emissions were having on the ocean.
I think he's making it on.
And it was only really when that connection was made that it kind of dawned on us as filmmakers that we were part of this story, because obviously we were consumers, so we were complicit. And so there was myself, there was Lewis Arnold and Demi Taylor, and I think between the three of us, so Lewis is the kind of filmer director. Demi and I both kind of wrote and produced.
Oh.
I thought it was a bit quiet. Oh, there we go.
Oh wow, that's.
Did you actually get any of that? Okay. Okay. Yeah, so the three of us, between us, we kind of felt we had the skill set to make the film. Lewis had already done some filming and he made a short film which he brought to us. It was very visual. It didn't really have like a narrative thread, and I think he hoped to be able to show this as a short and really raise the profile of the issue. But being storytellers ourselves, we were like, well, I think there's a feature documentary in this. So the three of us put our heads together and we went, listen, let's go for it, because this story is just not getting any traction. So we decided to get together and do a feature documentary. Now we're kind of 5 years down the line. We initially did a 40-minute edit of the film, which we financed ourselves. I had an old classic car which I sold. Lewis had some camera lenses that he sold. You obviously chipped in as well. And the three of us made this film. We went to Cancer Alley, we filmed with the local community. We spent time there. Which again, we did it in an unconventional way, because we basically went and stayed in the community and we would, call people up and say, can we come and film with you today? And they go, yeah, how long will it take you to get there? And we go, we'll be there in 2 minutes. And they go, you're in reserve? Because everybody that goes stays in New Orleans and then they travel in every day because they don't really want to stay in the plan. But we try to immerse ourselves in the community and spend time and hear about their experiences. And so, we made a 40-minute edit. Luckily, from the back of that, we were able to generate some more support and we could go away and actually make a full 75-minute film, which is what you guys saw at the US premiere. Hopefully that's a kind of positive issue.
Demi, anything to add from your perspective, so in terms of how it all started and getting to this is back in 2022, 2023, right?
So the original discussions we had were actually during COVID, during lockdown. In fact, it was just before lockdown. It was we were at an environmental event for Surfers Against Sewage.
You got a name drop. Who was there?
We were meeting who is now King Charles, Prince Charles, and he came around and shook everybody's hands, and then a week later he went into the COVID lockdown and we found out that he had COVID. And then mysteriously we got some very nasty illness.
Felt a little under the weather.
So our claim today was that King Charles gave us COVID.
We can neither confirm nor deny that.
Allegedly.
So what happened is you screened it in early 2023. What was the response reaction then as the film stood for the 40-minute version?
We got an amazing reaction. I think most people had never heard of this, and so they were hearing about this for the first time. The response was incredible, and first, some people were angry, some people were like, how come we never knew about this? But most people, in fact, you always take a poll when we did screening, you would do a poll and you say how many people would wear an ivory wetsuit again.
Because we weren't doing it to kind of, make a statement. I was genuinely interested to see, does this story move our audience as much as it's moved us? And at every screening, we probably had somewhere between 70 and 200 people at each screening. And at each of those screenings, the whole audience put their hand up and said we would never buy neoprene again. And at that point we went, okay, I think we've really got something. And I think it was probably at that point, while surfing was really on board with it, I think it's probably at that point that the surf industry went, yikes, this is quite a thorny issue. Yeah, but also what was fascinating for us from that screening is that we had really primarily focused on the environmental racism side of the story, because really that's primarily what it was for us. It was a story of inequality. The questions that were being asked at those screenings really informed how we went forward with our next edit. And actually, it's probably the same here, but regionally, we had very different questions asked everywhere we went. Some people just naturally got it, and some people really needed it explained a little bit more, but the big issues that came up were really around things like greenwashing, limestone neoprene, which is this other type of neoprene that's been sold as traditionally environmentally friendly, or as we were discussing earlier, is often known as premium limestone neoprene. And that's just a greenwashing term. So we realised that there were questions that were coming up from the film that we really, really needed to answer. So that really informed, the journey that the film then took. And also I think the other thing we really wanted to come out of this is that there is a story of hope. And I really think that's where the whole natural rubber, the answer to the solution comes in.
I think we'll get to some of the more recent developments along the way. I think there's a reason for hope for the industry and the consumer who can choose natural rubber wetsuits or make the change to the industry. So there's hope there. I wonder if there's hope for that community, if we look at it from that perspective. You talk a little bit about the governments more recently as we go along. But I think there's definitely hope within the industry, which is where brands like Patagonia come to the surface. How did you fall into the film? What was your entry into meeting these guys and the discussions about Patagonia, about your involvement?
There was no internal discussion with Patagonia. I was connected to Lewis through Gabe, who's kind of my counterpart slash friend from Patagonia in the UK. And those initial stories from the EPA that came out on CNN and NPR, and then finally the Guardian expose. I was communicating with Gabe and Lewis at that time, and actually got to see, I think that inspired Lewis to go to reserve initially and do his really very rough, raw first edit, which I saw and was like, oh my gosh, the world needs to see this. I was kind of coming out of the skin. And just kind of kept in contact. And was asked to do an interview, but I didn't necessarily ask for approval.
It's interesting because I'm interested to know, I'm sure you are, Patagonia's approach to getting behind the film, or whether it was a personal.
Yeah, it was all personal.
And what's the case now with Patagonia's thoughts about the film, supporting the film?
They are fully behind it. I think one also let it remain an independent, its own thing, and kind of, help support any way it can, but just not really, let it remain independent and avoid any kind of, muddying of the waters.
Interesting. So while you're talking, maybe you can tell the audience about your involvement with the bigger story around neoprene to natural, your evolution from Billabong to Patagonia, and how you've seen the trends and the changes.
Yeah, so that's a long story. How much time? I don't even remember when it began, 2008 or 2009. I met this gentleman over here through kind of a mutual acquaintance. I think Jeff had read Patagonia's blog post about there being no such thing as a green wetsuit, no such thing as a green neoprene, which broke down that explained there's a difference between petroleum and limestone-based neoprene. That's 2007, 2008. I had Billabong at that time telling everyone, hey, we have this new limestone neoprene. I read that blog post and I'm like, oh. And I printed that out and gave it to our sales team, saying, hey, this is not true. And I think around the same time, you guys saw it, Yulex were like, oh, maybe we have something. A mutual acquaintance put us in touch, like around the same time. It's just kind of serendipity. So we started talking. You created like a Scrabble chip size piece of foam, and that was like where the dream began, I think. Yeah. Yulex came to do a presentation. You were shopping around, trying to find this partner. Came to Billabong at the Action Sports Retailer Show in San Diego, gave a presentation in front of the heads of Billabong from every region, and everyone was like standing ovation. this is amazing, oh my gosh, and of course, you were looking for some money to help fund development, probably, boo, ratings goes when it's done, so, and I think Patagonia was like, yes, let's do this together, and ended up leaving Roll and coming to Patagonia when one of the very first prototypes was ready to be used, and got to go surf it and roll it, and it was like this big. And on shore, it was like the best thing ever.
How do you know origins first? Human.
All in, yes, yeah.
There was natural solution. Brain need one of all the companies to make respond. Oh, but there's an alternative. We're in, but Patagonia did. They not only did go all in, but opened it up for everybody to be all in, right? We talked about that last night.
Yes.
About that story is fascinating. That here it is, everyone.
Another kind of funny moment. Patagonia is just a tiny little wetsuit brand, compared to all the other brands around the world. So whenever we make a tent, we keep it to ourselves. So the plan from the get-go is to offer it to everybody, and at another trade show, outdoor retailer in Salt Lake City, we invite O'Neill and Excel and Body and Rip Curl and Bill and everybody. Come see what we've done, and we think everyone's just gonna be, oh yeah, this is amazing, but it's like, boo. In hindsight, it probably wasn't ready at that time,
But it was, but also it was ready because before that time there was only neoprene. So this is the, you get presented with a beautiful solution from Jeff to Patagonia who makes it commercialize it and gives it to all the other brands to do it.
Yeah, I feel like if everyone would have been on board at that moment, we'd be 5 years ahead of where we are now.
I don't think
At
that
least.
So
That's true.
yeah.
Yeah.
Out the community, you may not have needed to say the surf industry is complicit here because we would have all made a change in 20.
Yeah.
By then it was 2016, right? So when it commercialized it.
I think that was even before. It could have been 2013 when we had that initial invite
Right.
to the industry.
So hearing is the issue that people want to see change, like they said they want to see change, and then they see films like this and we want to make change, but the industry often doesn't make the change, which is very, very discouraging. I made the change when I saw the bootleg version, and it was very, very difficult to force the company that I work for, Excel, to make change because the team who'd been making wetsuits out of neoprene have been making wetsuits out of neoprene in the same factory for 40 years. And when I came back and seen the bootleg version in January 2023 and said we need to accelerate our move to go natural, everybody said, why? Why should we? There's nothing wrong with what we're doing. And I said, wait till you see this film. Looked at the film, we're fine. So you've really got to push hard to make people change. It's very unfortunate. And yet, as you all seen from the film, it's pretty shocking. You want to make change when you see films like that, and yet it's very hard to turn an industry around, despite everything that we just talked about.
But I have to say as well, I think for us privately and personally, when we were talking about the brands that we thought would have the most influence in terms of making that change to natural rubber, there were two names that sprung to mind. One was O'Neill, because obviously they're sort of, I think they're always thought of as like the godfather of the wetsuit industry. And the other was XL, because XL only ever sold itself as a performance brand. XL never attached itself to being an environmental brand. And I think traditionally, environmentalism can almost be seen as other, less than, that you're having to make a compromise because you're making an environmental choice. And I think for us, when XL came online and committed to using natural rubber, I think it absolutely blew that argument out of the water because we were so aware that if the technology wasn't up to scratch, there is no way that XL would put their name to that. So for us, I have to say, normally as a filmmaker, you'd be horrified to hear that your film's been bootlegged, but I have to say, it's one of the best things that ever happened.
I mean, it was difficult because when I went back to the office and said we need to go green, and the wonderful head of product, Lance, who we all know is one of the leaders in Wetsuit innovation, said, I'd love to go green when the performance is equal to or better than neoprene, and the price is the same as or less than the price of neoprene. I said, good argument, Lance, when can you do this? And he said, 2026. And this is in January 2023. So I went to the surf media and wrote a press release saying, Excel's going green in 2026. And then came out to the office and said, here it is, it's right now we have to do it. And he said, oh shit, okay. But his point was, I'm not going to make something, that range in the performance, I'm not going to make something subpar to what people expect, all those all their customers. And we learned the difficulty with Patagonia selling it at a premium that people won't often pay a premium. So the price is to be assembled less, performance is to be assembled better, and then we'll do it. And he said it will take 3 years to do it in one, because of course he could do it, he just didn't want to do it. And that proved that you can't make those excuses. You have to just make a change if you want to. So that was the journey. So thank you for the short version. It's
My pleasure.
yeah. And Sarah, how did you contribute to the film? How did you come about meeting these folks and telling your story? And the wonderful part of the film with you and Sam explaining your lifestyle.
Yeah, sure. I just reached out via email. So I teach chemistry at Real College. It's near Santa Cruz, and I'm a surfer. And so part of the Safe Waves Coalition, and I started surfing a long time ago. And was the first woman to surf fabrics about 25 years ago. Can't believe that long. It's that long. But you can imagine how many wetsuits I've gone through, right? And trying to find a good fit, and something to keep me warm, something to last a season under harsh conditions, and so very familiar with camping. And also, I have done my minor at Cal Poly Sloan, my undergraduate in polymers and coatings. I didn't pursue that in grad school. I did spectroscopy and looking at the way light and matter interact, and then really went into education after that. Was my primary focus, but yeah, so Liz or you emailed me and said, hey, we're doing this film. I'd love to interview coming to the States. And I said, oh, sure. And I just kind of went back and brushed up on my polymer chemistry. And then was like, oh my gosh, when I was learning about this, we did tours to LA and we're looking at factories and things. And there wasn't a question about much about the pollution aspect. It was just a time when there was concern about VOCs, the volatile organic compounds, and there was a switch between the VOCs that had been used in the polymer and paint industry into something else that was less toxic. There has to be volatile organic compounds in that paints and things, right? You have to have something that leaves the color or whatever behind the polymer behind. But so I really, when I started looking into the chemistry aspect and the consequences of leftover chloroquine in the air and the highly reactive molecules and carcinogenic, I was shocked. And then I started doing research about the calcium carbonate or the limestone, and it's not easy to find. You have to really look to find what the chemistry is involved in producing that Cheeto-cream, I think they call it, right? And it's not environmentally friendly at all. So I was shocked, and I just put something together, and then I don't remember if I said, hey, I do it in the stand, or I can't remember how we came over that, but it was really wow. And then I had the pleasure to meet them. The surf was pumping. We just said, these guys are committed filmmakers. Because I was trying to get in the water, yeah, I can surf, what are you doing? What are you doing? They're like, no, we have this meeting, we're just going to go here. I was like, wow, you guys are committed. And then I basically went to we're a small, Wetsuit's from a small company, that they can stitch in Santa Cruz, and I said, I'd like to try Yulex. And so they made a couple Wetsuits for me with Yulex, and they were fantastic. So I'm definitely never buying the wetsuit again. Yeah.
It's interesting with the limestone neoprene claim. If you look at almost any wetsuit brand's website right now that's a neoprene brand, they will say their eco initiative is the limestone neoprene. I think that one of it is just ignorance. I don't think for a lot of brands in the marketing departments, really the product folks, but the marketing departments believe that that is the finish line. If you've done limestone neoprene, you've gone green. You don't want Demi to find you on LinkedIn if you're making those claims, because she'll find you and she'll tell you that it's not. And it's a little shame, but correct, sorry, it's far from the finish line. Limestone neoprene, as we explained, is not anywhere near the eco solution. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how we need to move on from that story, the limestone story?
Well, like I said, when we did our first screenings, everybody was like, we're doing the green thing, we're buying limestone neoprene. So for us, that became the kind of, we went, this is a big part of the story moving forward. And I think we were discussing, we were going, how are we going to do limestone neoprene? And we kind of had this huge scenario, we were like, what if we got Dr. Sarah Gerhardt to explain it, you know? And that would be amazing, you know, we can reach out, but I don't know if she'll do it. And then when you agreed to do it, we were like, oh, this is so good. And it turned out to be, it's like such an amazing part of the film because it just succinctly kind of explains the situation and does it in a way that, you know, surfers and water users can relate to. So.
Remember you emailed me earlier and said you need to take that box off the website. And it's 6 boxes of how we make wetsuit, one of them is limestone. If you go to the Excel website now, there's only 5 boxes. We took that one down and never replaced it, but it was ignorant.
Yeah, but you know what? You were the only brand who really embraced that. I didn't have to take you on LinkedIn. I think we just messaged you privately even on Instagram, because I think what we were really trying to do with this film is we were actually trying to take brands with us. You know, we gave everyone quite a lot of opportunity to get their houses in order. You know, there's a reason why we released this rough cut in 2023. Everyone had so much notice that this film was coming that we assumed that by the time the film launched, that the ending would be very, very different to the ending that is now. We assumed, you know, as you guys have said, like, as you experienced when you took Yulex to surfing world initially, you thought everyone was going to go, yeah, brilliant, let's step into the future. We thought the same thing when we took this story to the surf brands again. And the number of brands who either denied that there was a link between surfing and Cancer Alley, which, I mean, it's undeniable, the link is there in black and white in EPA reports.
And in this whole shipping dockets.
In the shipping dockets.
When we tried to tell the brands, we tried to forewarn them, we were like, we have the evidence, you know, and yet they still were going, no, it's not happening, it's never happened. And you can just go and research it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, ourselves, we were like, okay, there's a link between Denker and Cancer Alley, even if the neoprene is no longer coming from Cancer Alley. The fact that the surf industry is doing business with Denker, you know, you're basically subsidizing the factory, whether you're doing it indirectly or you're purchasing directly. So for us, that link was always there, but we didn't know about the shipments, and we couldn't find out about the shipments. And then we were talking to one of the campaigners in St. John's Parish, and she was explaining about there being a recent rail crash in the US, and it burned, and there was a lot of toxins released into the atmosphere. And she said, oh, well, the reason they knew what was on the train was from the shipping dockets. And we were like, okay, what do you mean? So she was explaining about buzzard blading and everything. So then I went away and became an expert on buzzard blading, signed up to it. You had to pay a huge amount of money to join this, like, kind of.
It's like the shipping market.
It was like
You know, it's like you're tracking your tanker across the ocean and you want to know exactly where it's going. Your pockets are deep.
Yeah.
Our pockets as independent filmmakers were not deep at all.
No.
I think you might have got like the introductory offer for a month and then you had to pick it off it.
Yeah. But you can basically find out what's being shipped where around the world by who. And under DuPont, they were politically about it. You know, they were just like, this much neoprene is going to this factory, and it's all there. And then when Demi took over, they became a bit more secretive, where they would be like shipping neoprene, but it would be going to a port. You would get the end user. But what we had was, you know, I was looking at these ports going, well, this port is right next to this wetsuit factory. So then I got in contact with the wetsuit factory, and they were like, no, we're not getting shipments from them. And they came back and went, oh, we just had a look, and actually we have been getting shipments. Yes. But they're not going into wetsuits. We're like, okay, but all you make is wetsuits. So.
And why are we even arguing about this? I mean, at the end of the day, it's a terrible story regardless of train crashes and everything else. This is the amazing thing about the story in the surf industry. 5 brands, major brands, who all make wetsuits in the same factory, have a 75 or so % market share. So if those 5 brands change, you change the whole equation, right? Or you have to change 20 million surfers to buy wetsuits. So it seems like the 5 brands are making the change rapidly. They don't need order Gold, Billabong, Quicksilver, Roxy, Excel, maybe this one. So where are we with the brands first? Are they making change? Will they ever make change? We can talk about that. And if they don't make the change, but there are alternatives to the Patagonias and the Finishes of the world, is it up to the consumer to make the change? Where is change going to come from? Let's talk about the brands first. Why aren't the brands changing? It's a no-brainer, you would think.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, I guess you're from the inside of the industry. I mean,
Aren't you in the brand?
yeah, but I'm so.
The brands. So I want to have a conversation. The conversation is, are the brands changing or no? If not, why not? And therefore, what will we do?
There's a certain degree of perception of change from the brands, isn't there?
Yeah, like some of the brands, a small number just got it straight away and went, oh my god, we have to change. There were some brands that were reluctant. They were like, well, how do we do this? And oh, Yulex isn't as good. It's not stretchy. And we actually went and sat down with a quite large wrestling company. We showed them the early edit. They were like, oh my god, this is terrible, but we can't use Yulex because it's not as good. And we were like, no, you're not thinking. You've got to be thinking 3 years in the future. In 3 years' time, it will be indistinguishable. And they were like, oh, yeah, I don't know if the consumer. We're like, you haven't marketed Yulex yet. You know, this is a new product for you. You have to inform your consumer. You have to think in 3 years' time, the product will be there, the marketing will be there. It's going to be easy to make that transition. But we're filmmakers. We were having work.
Yeah.
We were having to tell a brand. I mean, as a brand, you should know that.
Like R&D should mean more than what colour are we going to make it this season. It means research and development. Yet brands are so reluctant to put any money into that side of things. They would just, it's like, listen, Jeff, they wanted it to be instantly perfect. They weren't prepared to work with you, to put the work in, to, work with you in terms of what their requirements were and put the time in, right?
Which is not what you expected, as you said before. You thought that from the film that would encourage people, we can do this, we can innovate.
Well, but also to say to them, almost to give them notice and say, hey guys, this story is breaking. I was like, if this was my industry, if I simply made wetsuits, I would make it my business to learn everything I could about neoprene, which is my one job description if I make wetsuits, surely. And I would make it my business to understand everything about natural rubber, and I would want to be in a position to be able to make that transition because I know this story is coming.
And that's again the astonishing thing about the film. I mean, at the surface level, you learn that neoprene is bad because it's made from petrochemicals and natural rubber is good because it's made from trees, and you want to do the good thing, so you do the good thing. That's the basics. Then you see the film and you see the social injustice and the poor community that's being ravaged, and you can't unsee that. And then how can you go to work and make neoprene? You would imagine that people would go to work and say we have to make change.
Yeah, and it's amazing based on that, the excuses you hear for not making change. I think that's been the most shocking. That you can see and understand the injustice, and you can stand there and quibble about a $2 difference. And when you're talking about the cost of somebody's life, really, what's $2 is absolutely nothing. This is a leisure industry, We're all in a pretty privileged position. If we have enough money in our pocket to buy a wetsuit, we're already winning at life, We need a reality check.
And I have to say, like when we went into this, we had an idea of the story, but it was through talking to people like Hubbard, and Hubbard was really honest and open with us about the situation and explaining things to us. Like when Hubbard said, "Oh, I sent this story to my counterparts." I mean, for us that was like a revelation, because we went, "Well, people just didn't know." But things like that, it was like, okay, right, so people did know. So Hubbard's honesty was like really important in film.
Yeah, it was.
How would it be there for that?
I'm sorry.
Anything to add about the obvious honesty?
No, but yeah, I did. I sent it to some of my friends and counterparts in the industry, and yeah, it's kind of no reply.
So it seems like the top 5 or 6 brands aren't going to make an effort. One did, but the others are going to build to make an effort.
Yeah, they did actually. Scott Boone and Bill Long, he's like family. He was trying to make a full switch to Bill, but just kind of getting pushed back internally. So
And ownership changes.
yeah,
And like, what's interesting for those that don't know, but a lot of the smaller surf brands, the boutique brands, are making the switch or coming straight to market with Yulex, which is super encouraging. And a lot of those brands are either from Europe or from Australia, where I'm from. So we are seeing winds of change, less so in the US, although the film you mainly shown the film in Europe today, right?
Yeah, I mean it's really difficult to shoot in the US, to be honest. But there's a lot more. The media in the US has been a lot more receptive. The festivals. There's a lot more knowledge now in the UK than in Europe. There's people are more aware of the story because it's just been easier to get the story out there.
And the reaction is, Demi said, when you show it 70 times or more now, right? And every time you do the show of hands, who's not going to buy an earring? So far, the audience reaction is unanimous.
Yeah, I think there's a real disparity between the reaction of surfers and the reaction of the surf industry. And I think the industry, we were saying it's a counterculture, right? But it was set up to kind of serve surfing. But it's really not doing that. It's like it's tone deaf, it's not listening. I'd love surfing, I'd love the industry of surfing to catch up to surfing.
Because again, if you see it as a surfer, how can you go into a surf shop and buy an earring wetsuit having seen the film? I think for many of you that may have seen it last night, whether you surf or not, you're emotionally, impacted by it, and you will remember that story and tell many people. I spoke to some of you last night about it, and you said, I don't believe this is happening in my country. So maybe Europe is an indication, because you've rolled it out there, and people like, I'm all in as a consumer, that maybe the US is going to roll through here, and people are going to rush to Patagonia. This could be the best thing that's ever happened at Patagonia. This could be your run for 80% market share in the wetsuit category, not least of which all the wetsuit brands are in relative disarray right now, but that's the hope. If the industry is not going to change, then we need to get the people to change.
Do you think the industry will change? I mean, just to flip it around to you, I mean, I know that
I feel like in the 2 years since the first time I showed the film, I think it's changed quite a lot. In the brands and the manufacturers and actually it's been a significant change from my perspective.
Half of the brands that we just mentioned have changed ownership in the last 2 years as well. So there's been a big shift in focus of doing the right thing for the marketplace versus doing the right thing as the ownerships have changed. So maybe it's those brands that help one Quicksilver settle down into, well, they're going to be licensing, so maybe there's no hope. I mean, there's actually a huge opportunity in the surf industry because of those brands disappearing. 4 brands that are going to step up, not just as a leadership brand, but as a leadership brand in the natural space, right? You would hope this is a big opportunity.
Totally.
Which comes back to the US rollout. So this is the premiere in the US. Last night, which is a very proud moment. We've been pushing, asking over a year now. When's it coming? So it's here. What next in the US? We need people to see this film.
Yeah, we do. We do. It's not easy getting access to an audience in the US. We have faced pushback, from festivals, from the media, and from the industry. So we're really trying as hard as we can to kind of break down those obstacles and break down those barriers.
You can check it up on YouTube or video of the podcast.
Do you know what? I don't think that's the way that people watch. I don't think that's the way people are going to engage with this. I think people need to sit down. I think you need to feel that experience of sitting in an auditorium and really immersing yourself in the story. This isn't the sort of film that you want to get up halfway through and make a cup of tea, stroke your dog, put your child to bed. It's not that film. This is people's lives we're talking about, and we really want people to be immersed in this story. It's not a shred flick, I think if it was just a surfing shred flick, I think, you could pop it up on YouTube and I think people would watch it.
I agree. I rewatched it last week to get ready for the film festival and told my wife, would you like to watch a surf film tonight? This will trigger her to watching it. And she says, and she was right. 20 minutes later, she was in tears saying, this isn't real. I didn't give her any warning on how heavy the film was while she was crying. But we watched it on TV at home, but shorter film festivals. We were talking about that. You see, we pictured there's a bunch of film festivals in the US. Where are you at with that?
I think we thought the hard part was getting full out, which was really difficult. I mean, we reached out to so many people, to so many big name surfers to try and get them to be involved in this. There were big name surfers who basically tell the world that they are environmental and that's part of their kind of, identity. And we would get in contact and try and explain the situation, say, do you want to be involved? And we just absolutely got knocked back by everybody. And then, so we thought when we actually made the film, we thought we'd kind of done the hard bit, but actually getting the film seen is being equally as hard. And so to start with, we even have festivals reach out to us, like when the film was done, and they would reach out and go, oh my God, the film's done, we've heard all about it, we're super keen, we send us a screener, it sounds amazing, we send them a screener, and then they get in contact and they go, wow, what an amazing film. We could really see this on Netflix and we really get the ethos of the film, but
and we get really excited and think, oh, this is shit that we're in, and they're going to open the door to Netflix for us, this is going to be amazing.
Yeah, and then they go, but we can't screen it. And we go, okay, and then they go, we're sponsored by Wetsuit brand, or we had one festival say we can't screen because this is the solidly Trump state, and people just want to see it. So they were really honest in their knockbacks. But it's been that way since.
Sorry, I've been in direct marketing for so long that I can't help myself. So I'm sitting here trying to solve your problem.
Brilliant.
So I know I've been connected with the 101 Surf guys here in Marin County because they're fantastic, super involved in the kite surfing community here too, Marina Green and everything else. There are ways of attacking it through direct channels. If you're storing it yourself and you serve it yourself, you could connect with surf shops who could send it to their email list. So you could get it directly into the customers. You could do Experian itself. Experian is a database, like we all do their credit one reports or something. So they actually sell data, as is done in Bradstreet. So everyone who buys a wetsuit or buys something from Patagonia, that data is available for you to actually purchase, for you to actually get directly at those people, and based on what you're trying to do, you might be able to get some sort of basically non-profit like price or discount on that. So send it out directly, play maybe in the shops itself. I mean, I know that it's 75 minutes, but if you have a setup within the store, I mean, there's multimedia in a lot of these stores now that they have. I mean, you walk down around the corner to Gap on the waterfront, and they have their whole wall. It's just like a whole wall, you know? I mean, and you guys in your stores, I mean, you could do, people bring in their neoprene and get it, whatever that is, from a price point off of a new suit. I mean, just like, it's like a massive, like, or thing, just like exchange it, just like bring in your current suit, like just get the right thing, like right now. There are companies who are shredding, like Plastic Bank. Have you heard of Plastic Bank? So they're doing something called sustainable plastic. So what they do is they've actually set up, they go into these different countries and they set up depositories in like churches and things like that. So they're not even real estate costs. And they have the locals picking up plastic bottles and other things on the beaches, and then they exchange it for Bitcoin. That can then be used for like insurance, like college, like cash, and other sort of stuff. So this man is like doing this huge evangelistic sort of thing around the country and is targeting the 7 major waterways to clean up. So like he was going to the Ganges and like everything else. So he's very targeted in how he's going about the cleanup of the planet, right? So what he does is he makes then he turns it into these pellets, and it's called sustainable plastic. And he's now doing it with aluminum, and he resells it to DuPont, right? So he resells it to these companies. And so what he's done is he's got some of these companies like DuPont and whatever who will then use plastic. So it's all this recycling sort of thing. So if you can have him turn the neoprene or like make that something that he's now turning into something else, like there's a possibility to get involved.
So it's interesting what you're saying about the recycling. That's a really big question for us, isn't it? That we have not been able to find an answer to. Actually, the sustainability, so Hubbard, you've spent a really long time, haven't you, exploring the recyclability of neoprene. How's that gone down?
Actually, we had like a huge breakthrough with natural rubber wetsuits, where we're able to pyrolyze them into reclaimed carbon black, which then is used in the production of brand new wetsuits, which can be done endlessly.
You've hit the holy grail, haven't you? Because for years, people have been trying to recycle wetsuits into wetsuits, and they've been thinking of it in a very different way, and you've thought naturally about it, which was so genius about the carbon black, right?
Right. Yeah, it's like you can't turn a wetsuit into a new wetsuit, but if you're thinking like, can't turn cake into a new cake, but you can turn cake into flour, use the flour to make a new cake. That's kind of what we're doing here. And that's something which we knew could be done. It's really about figuring out the supply chain and overcoming the hurdles to make it happen. And finally figure that out.
But that's with natural rubber, right?
It's with natural rubber. And I'm told they can do it with neoprene as well, but in smaller quantities. That's what I'm told. I'm not positive yet.
Yeah, I've seen it, potentially. I mean, there's definitely a need to do something. And that's one of the issues that the film doesn't touch on is what is the end life of all of this neoprene, right? I mean, 1930 is when DuPont first synthesized neoprene and is the first synthetic rubber that was made. That's over 100 years ago. Think about how much of that is out in the environment now. And wetsuits aren't the major consumer of neoprene, but as environmentalists, surfers, being in touch with nature, we should lead the way. And then hopefully the other companies and other, consumers of other uses of neoprene, like my computer case, right, is a neoprene sleeve. So hopefully other consumers of neoprene will get on board with the fact that, what are we doing with this neoprene that doesn't have any life, really? I mean, you can shred it up and make it into something else maybe that's less useful, right? But you can't take a neoprene wetsuit and turn it back into a neoprene wetsuit. But you take a rubber wetsuit and turn it back into a rubber wetsuit, natural. So that's the other aspect of like the film 2.0, like what's the end life, right? And the principles of green chemistry are that, you know, we shouldn't be using chemicals that are toxic. We should really look to minimize the toxicity. And then you need to think all the way to the end. What is this going to be in the end, right? You don't just take it and throw it away. And so I think that is important messaging as well for consumers, because we're kind of getting on this idea of understanding all this plastic, right? We see it everywhere. We can't get away from it. Neoprene is an elastic plastic. It's an elastomer, right?
And as you mentioned, and the film mentions wetsuits and neoprenes, it's a very small percentage of the bigger uses of neoprene. I think Jeff calculated last night roughly that was less than 5% of the total use of neoprene in the world.
Yeah, so in the film you quote the figure there's 422,000 metric tons of neoprene produced annually. And so if you look at the entire wetsuit industry, or wetsuits, dive suits, triathlon suits, altogether that may consume 20,000 metric tons. So you're talking about less than 5% of the industry for neoprene is really from sporting goods and action sports. The majority of chloroprene rubber is used in the automotive industry. If you look under the hood, all the hoses, fan belt, anything that looks like rubber is made from chloroprene.
Right. But we don't have those touching us like we do with wetsuits.
So it's very resistant, it's very good at weatherability, which is why it was originally used in wetsuits, why it was used in wetsuits, and why it's used under the hood of your car with weatherability. And so you take rubber and you mix chlorine with it, you take the monomer, and it's the chlorine that gives it the weatherability, but it's also the chlorine emissions that is killing people.
Right.
So should you be like being with Tesla? Right now, are you trying to have now him use instead of using rubber like that?
Well, if we can't get the wetsuit industry to change, we can't get the automotive industry to change. So the whole idea
Well,
is-
do you think that's true?
But
Because
because I got Elon with the solar, I mean, it's like, I mean, he's here in San Francisco, you guys are just, you're here, I mean, it's like getting a meeting with that,
We're making things right now, right, where we provide an alternative. We have an industry that's using natural rubber instead of chloroprene rubber, and it's a relatively small industry, and the majority of those people that are in the industry are environmentalists. They live in the ocean, and they're
Well, they like to pretend they are.
He's towing a sunflower boat. I mean, I saw it, and in Tiburon, I studied it. I literally saw this like solar power, like powerhouse motorboat thing, like come by, like I was like, only Tesla could build a thing like that. You know what I mean? Panels on the top. I mean, there was no motor, and I was like, right on. You know, I mean. I'm a highly sensitive person myself, and there's a great book called Sex and the Sea that talks about the mating rituals of organisms that cannot see each other and use energy and hearing to find each other at the reef. It's the reef disco, right? And they can't find each other anymore because of all the boats and the traffic and everything else. So our fish population dies. They can't. The species, like they can't find each other. All these mating rituals and everything, they're all being disturbed by the noise pollution that comes through the water. So now Tesla's building those boats. It takes all of that consumer motor stuff out of there. If he's in that process of doing that, the next step might be to optimize with what you guys have got telling us to get those.
Definitely the other industries is definitely something to tackle. We have a question as well.
Yeah, so just curious, because I haven't looked into it, what kind of concerns or considerations are there for the supply chain of natural rubber? Because I mean, it's always nice to have a solution, but sometimes we create problems with our own solutions. So like, what does that look like?
You guys can speak to that for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question.
You guys here? Okay.
So many different plants produce natural rubber. Okay, so the one that we used is Patagonia, and it was taken from the Amazon by the way of Kew Gardens, and then basically during colonial times planted in Southeast Asia. Okay, so the French were heavily invested, for example, in all of natural rubber plantations. In fact, it's so valuable that during the Vietnam War, the Vietnamese government said they would pay $60 for every rubber tree that was destroyed. And that's how valuable the rubber tree was for that industry. So that said, the big concern with natural rubber was, do you have to basically take down forests to grow rubber, right? And yes, at one time you do, okay? So what happens in the Europe is they have something called EUDR, the European Deforestation Regulation. There's actually a comparable one here in Congress, which you can imagine is double. And it probably won't pass within the next 4 years. But basically what it does is it puts a line in the sand. It says that there should be no deforestation as of December 2020. Okay, that's a ridiculously low bar, right? Your backyard probably would also qualify, right? So it's a ridiculously low bar, but we have been working with natural rubber certified plantations starting with Patagonia and FSC dating back to 1994, which was actually the original date of FSC certification for that. So all of the natural rubber and raw materials that Yulex works with has always been certified. It's either with FSC certified, which is Force Council Stewart certification, or PFC, Program for Endorsement of Force. So either basically guarantees, not guarantees necessarily, but basically go through an audit system. And that audit system makes sure that basically you're not using certain restricted chemicals that are harmful for humans, and that you're basically paying a fair wage, that you're complying with the International Labor Organization, that you don't have child labor, that you have basically equality for women, and of course that you're hiring more, you're paying them the same as men. And so there are certain checkpoints within that, and that's why we pay for the certification, and we, basically. And so we work on the ground with all the smallholders now in Thailand and in Vietnam, and create linkages with them to cooperatives who can then help manage and make sure that there is that certification and make sure that there's compliance with EUDR and traceability, so that eventually at some point, when you look at a Patagonia wetsuit, you can trace it back to Shaco, and then Shaco should be able to trace back that raw material, which is natural rubber, to one of the Yulex natural rubber partners in Vietnam, probably Binful, and down right to the barrel, to the bale, to the bale of natural rubber, and from that rubber to the collection site from which it came from, and from that collection site to the actual smallholder who tapped it at midnight. Okay? And so that supply chain is very transparent. And if you ever want to come to Vietnam, we can walk you through it. Okay? You can't.
Yeah, we go
do that with wood, right? You obviously can't do that with wood. And that's something that, U.S. has been doing, and we're not a B Corp, or probably better than a B Corp, but it's something we've been doing from the very beginning, and started with Patagonia when we, launched the electrical suit with that.
Thank you, Liz. Yet another reason why wouldn't you make the change, right? Criticize.
Don't get me started on cancer out.
There are so many layers to the story that make me think, why wouldn't you make the change? It really is astonishing that it's been as hard as it's been since the film's come out. I still want to get into the US because I think that the change in the surf community needs to happen in the United States. It has to. It'll happen in Europe because people care. It'll happen in Australia because we're amazing. But it has to happen here. The industry's here. There's a lot of stuff is here. The film has to be shown here. What's plan B? How do we hope to get this film out, and what is the plan B to get the film out?
So one of the things we were hearing when we were making the film was, so when we started, it was a really good time for documentary filmmakers, and there were a lot of festivals, and there was a lot of funding available for documentaries. And then COVID came along and really impacted the documentary filmmaking world. And a lot of festivals were lost, a lot of funding dried up, a lot of the big, platforms stopped taking in documentaries and just commissioned their own, which you will see on things like Netflix. They're very formulated now, and so the ground has really changed. And so one of the things we were learning was a thing that people really relate to is kind of going and doing in-person formal screenings. So taking the film, touring it. People will come out to see a film if the filmmaker's there to answer the questions, that's like added value So that's what I mean, we've only done 4 screens so far in Europe, but when we go back to Europe, we're going on tour and we've got probably 10, we're doing 10 venues in the UK and 9 in Europe.
And as I say, in the UK and Europe, we're really fortunate that we have the backing of a really important environmental organisation called Surfing.This Sewage. They're one of like the original powerhouse activist groups. They're really lending their voice to us publicly, really supporting that. They're supporting the tour financially as well, because it costs money to take a film on the road. So it's things like that. We're so proud to work with them. It meant so much to us. It's an environmental organisation that works directly with surfing, who are willing to stand up next to us and take this story out there, because the story that they were talking about 5 years ago was a relationship with ocean plastics. The story that they're talking about now is about the petrochemical industry, and so they obviously can see very clearly the link between the petrochemical industry and an end product like a wetsuit, which is such a visible representation of that. And they understand that if they want to speak to people about these large philosophical issues, you need something really tangible that people understand. So yeah, we're incredibly proud to be working with them. So yeah, we hope to replicate that in the US. I think we definitely need to work with partner organisations to really help take that message out there. I don't know if we know anyone who's on the board of Save the Waves. It's an incredible environmental organisation.
Yeah, that was our dream. We were like, it would be great to go to America, do some festivals, but then get the film and do community screenings in partnership with an organisation. Because surfers will turn out and they'll watch it and they'll go talk to their friends. And that's the way that you really...
It's power of community.
Yeah, you really do.
Demi, though, for example, and I don't want to put Patagonia or Hubbard on the spot, being an IT attorney, I'm well aware of intellectual property. And so if you grant, for example, a license, some nominal fee to Patagonia, right? And Jeff and I have attended a number of Patagonia at the card store, for example. Sometimes they'll show movies, like when Belinda Bags and when David Bostwick was in town, they showed the movie. And also, I know that movies were also shown at the Paloma Theater. And so I know Patagonia can do, and they bring in crowds. They did it against like it's a cult. They bring in crowds, and so they can show this movie. So would you entrust, for example, let's just say if Ian showed up, or if Hud showed up, or if I showed up, or if Jeff showed up, and sort of, because you can't be all places at one time, would you trust us to tell your story if it could get out to a larger audience, if you could grant?
I mean, of course, I mean, that in a way is what we're doing with Surfers Against Sewage, because we can't be everywhere.
Right.
And yet we know we have so many ambassadors who can speak on our behalf, because I think one of the key takeaways for us is that we are 3 people who make this film. Normally on a film, I mean, you'd have 3 people making coffee, let alone the rest of the size of your production. So it is that thing of, write the theme tune, sing the theme tune, I mean, it's like, we are such a tiny team, and we really want our audience to become activists and take that message to their communities. So we're so open to those sort of opportunities of being able to work with other people, partnering with other people.
And I know it's an appetite because we've been to several Patagonia shows at the Paloma Theater in Encinitas, which is a movie theater.
I mean, but can't you just literally just send out a link and have people watch it from their own?
It doesn't work like that. I mean, people just don't respond to that.
Well, I mean, you might want to contact like Common Sense Media, because I mean, they're so active with. I used to work for Common Sense Media, and they do all the media for children 0 to 18 across all apps, all movies, and books, all films, and everything. They do a film award for themselves. They're super active in Washington D.C. around children's privacy. So they review things like this. Like it might be something you can do a recommendation on if you've got a link anywhere or a local place that you go and see it. I mean, you're talking about highly affluent moms, right? You're talking about the purchaser, right, to get into the home and the new wetsuit. So
Sounds
if you
like
can get the support of them to review your film and get that out in a newsletter or something, a recommendation or an invitation for them to go, whether it is to the local Patagonia store to see it or whatever that is, you could get the distribution out. You could get the distribution out that way.
so. No, I agree. I asked the same. I've been asking the same question about just getting it up on a YouTube or getting it up on a Netflix
Yeah,
or getting it up.
yeah.
It does sound like Chris and Demi Lewis want to do it at maybe at least the first stage with a much more personal approach with the events and the people and the partners, and either a non-profit and or a brand, and getting the community.
So Prime too, Amazon Prime is a possibility. They did the water war on Canada's years ago, so Amazon Prime, a lot of people store their stuff on Amazon Cloud Services. When we rebuilt the HP website, we stored it out in Amazon Cloud. So they've got the storage space for a 75-minute film that you might be able to store out there, and you can then distribute it out that way. So that's a possibility.
So Debbie, what would you, in other words, server side video, what would you say is you would like a viewer to do after? Not necessarily really fine and all of that, so what does that have to do with opposing is the end result basically toward natural pursuit, or is the end result to basically do something proactive to support, for example, a law firm to sue?
Well,
Right.
yeah.
There's two issues. There is definitely.
So from spending time with the community activists, they're incredibly welcome. They're incredible campaigners. They're people who were just living their lives in these parts sprung up alongside them. They have had to become activists, and they do it really well. And they have, they've been let down by the political system and legal system, but that's the avenue that they're pursuing. And our thought was, if we can approach it from a slightly different angle, rather than trying to replicate what they're doing, and that's through consumers. So, for example, our idea was surfing can be the first domino. If surfers stop wearing neoprene, start wearing natural rubber, then that's the first domino starts falling, and then maybe cyclists start going, oh, well, surfers, I read this thing about surfing wetsuit, well, my gloves are made of neoprene. And then, if you're a yoga master making neoprene, suddenly starts everybody thinking. And then eventually you're going to get to the point where Volvo are going to read about it in paper and they're going to go, where do we get our neoprene from? Why aren't we sourcing neoprene? Is there an alternative? And I think that's the point when you can make a real change, because at that point, is there any need for this factory anymore? And also, if this factory wants to carry on operating, maybe there's always going to be demand for neoprene, but it will be in a very, very small amount and very specific there's no other way to do it, but it has to be done in a very, very clean way. So hopefully the end point is the factory closes down due to the fact that you just don't need to.
And legislation has already been pursued, so our approach is quite a different approach, as you said. It's about engaging with people, it's about a bottom-up as opposed to a top-down. When we first started speaking with people about this film, everyone went, can we push for legislation? And there are people who've been trying to work to do that, and that has now unfortunately disappeared as an option. But yeah, we've been very much about targeting the people, the end user who uses this product, and trying to get people to link emotionally with the place.
It was interesting last night that the film that followed you guys was Secret Surfboard, and it was 3 films in one film, and the third film was all about subsea sewage, as an example, but that was the overarching message all the way through that film, is that top down is almost impossible.
It is.
Bottoms up is the way, the one domino that leads to the other dominoes, that individuals can make change. So this is all hope. I don't think the domino structure, I think we've thought and hoped the domino would drop in the last 2 years, but I don't think it has. I think the domino will drop when it hits here, and people here start to go, the story is here. the factory is here. I mean, we were speaking to some people last night. This is this country's issue. There are people outside this country, astonished about the story. So I think the domino hasn't dropped yet. I mean, there's some part of the press news about the town and the plant just from last week. Right? Do you guys want to update the reversal from the Biden's lawsuit and Trump axing that one?
I mean, it's weird for us as Europeans trying to get our heads around the US legal system because it's kind of so bizarre, but ultimately, the EPA would pretty much powerless to close the plant down because it's all at a state level. And the state of Louisiana, I mean, you have to bear in mind they are not breaking any laws by doing what they're doing. And it's because the local state allows them to pollute. The emission level, they're not reaching any legal levels. So when the EPA was trying to close them down, the local state and Demi were not doing anything wrong. And so the EPA were basically powerless to do everything. And then so they tried to pursue it through civil rights legislation. But then now that's been reversed under the new administration. So
And that was just last week, or the last couple of weeks, right? We're certainly hitting the news in the last year, which is pretty recent. The other update is that they wanted to move the school. The school is a prominent part of the film, and that hasn't been able to happen. Sort of.
I mean, and I think they've tried to do that a number of times over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, school is just, when you go there, there's the chemical plant, and then you walk, 50 yards down the road, and the school is there, and you can hear the kids out the back playing. It's just shocking and mind-blowing, really. So yeah, and then you hear people in film, and they go, I went to that school, my daughter goes to that school, but
I think the viewer public, I would say, the ultimate story. I mean, he's burying them, he's living it, his kids are living it. I mean, it's so raw. And again, I think if the reaction from the European audience is I'm not buying either anymore, we have to hope that's the reaction from the American audience, right?
Yeah. I mean, that is, Sarah, obviously you're a scientist, but you're a teacher as well. And so really, your job is storytelling. How do you think we help get this story out there?
You have to use the communication tools of the young people, which I don't use. So I'm going to have to get back on Instagram. Instead of just DMing my own kids. Yeah, and it also needs to be in the school, in exhibition, and the whole green science or green chemistry movement was really founded in 1998, and still 25 years later, we're still in our school teaching the same organic chemistry qualitative analysis that was taught 30 years ago. So we just had this conversation on Friday at our meeting, like, hey, we need to change what we're doing. And that's really where it starts, and we have to start thinking that way and teaching that way. And then when people are aware, then they go, oh, I need to make a change. Like, how many of you guys have heard of PFAS? Yeah, the acids. Quite a few, probably, yeah. Well, they're forever chemicals, they're everywhere, and it's a massive problem. And it's every fifth cover of Chemical and Engineering News is about, okay, how do we get rid of this chemical? How do we get it out of our waterways? How do we get it out of there? And, I just put down the covers of the magazine, like, you guys haven't heard of this? They're like, no. So we really, as educators, have to educate our students, and then they go home and they tell their family, right? And then they go, Mom or Dad, like, we can't buy this, and we can't buy that, and you need to do this, and then they start, yeah. So there's an interesting quote that I learned from an educator, because I was complaining about the fact that I have all these resources available for students, and they weren't using them, and I said, oh, you can lead them to the water, but you can make it drink. And my mentor said that you can make them thirsty. You can make them thirsty. And so once they're thirsty, they'll come, right? And part of the film is making people thirsty. And I think the challenge is that as human beings, we don't really like conviction. And there's an unsettling space that we have to allow ourselves to sit in around it. And it almost feels like a cliff, And So that is challenging, and I'm sure that there's pushback about the film because we want to feel happy, we want to feel good. There is a happy ending. There is a replacement material. So just having that is really, really powerful. People need to know. Yeah.
Sorry, this might sound so stupid, but what about, there's so many, like you guys said, cyclists, scuba divers, like get away from, forget the surfers. Because scuba divers are all buying wetsuits and they're just, you know, they don't have that attachment to the brand, right? Maybe just shift your gear of who you're spreading this information to.
We
That's
work with all the scuba companies. We're working with Aqualung, we're working with Scuba Pro.
Yeah.
How
We're working with the
famous?
big ones. We work with the triathlon suit
Are they
companies.
shifting?
We work with the bicycle companies. We work with sports medicine companies that do the braces and knee braces.
But I mean, to get out to the end user, sorry, is more what I'm saying, to like, let those end users know, because maybe then it'd come back a different way.
You're absolutely. This film's the right way to do it.
Yeah, totally. You're absolutely, that's very nice. You're absolutely right.
You might be able to get free print advertising if what you're doing, like if you actually create a printout and actually give it to the publications.
Yeah.
You might be able to actually get free media with print in some of those publications that will, you know, whether that's replace or awareness or drop into your film, you might be able to get actually just get a free print ad. You have to send film. You know, you have the cost of the film and the creation, but I mean, you've got, I imagine, what you have already poster-wise for what the film is. If you want to just start there, you could probably get like back cover, inside cover. I mean, and some of these placements are in the middle. I mean, it's worth it. It's worth a shot to be able to send that out to magazines. Maybe people would want. Why would you not want to include your ads in your publication?
Especially because the magazines also get ads from the Yulex brand, so they don't want to take they don't want to take it on board. That's been the experience.
That's been our experience within the surfing world, and that's why we've had so much pushback from the surf media, because you know that is how they fund these magazines, and it would be similar. I mean,
But you could do something in Marin Magazine, right? Marin Magazine goes to everyone who lives in Marin County. And again, like you're hitting household income, like 150K plus, like you're gonna get like exactly what you want to buy, go out buy. The people who are the activists, like all the Marin moms, like all that stuff, they're crazy about stuff like this. It's like, Marin Magazine, without a doubt, I mean, would put whatever it is you're trying to get in there, an article or anything, and just a one-on-one surf sports in San Rafael, like literally go over the bridge, go talk to those guys. I mean, they're so active in this area, and all of their customers are highly educated, super activists. They're in the Marine Food Bank. I mean, these are the ladies who lunch at the Red Cross, like those are the people you want to.
Thank you. Another question?
Yeah, so two things. One of the reasons I showed up today is because I work for, I'd say, a dive adjacent magazine in Australia called Ocean Geographic. We're an ocean conservation magazine, and I would love to offer you guys space to do an article, whether I write it or you write it or it's a combination. I'd love to have that. So that's one thing. Another thought, just in terms of getting people to respond personally to things, I don't know, Dr. Gerhardt, you might know, have there been any studies about the actual impacts of neoprene on people? Like, does it break down? Does it soak into your skin? Does it react with oxybenzone? Does it do weird things to us when we wear it? I mean, like, because obviously the easiest way to get somebody to go, look, I don't want to do that anymore, is to be like, it's hurting you. You, not them, you. And I didn't know if there was
It's true,
anything
it's
like
too
that.
personal, and I haven't done any research on it. I've been wearing it for so many years and having kind of interactions or anything, but I know if I had some skin reaction, I'd be like, what is this? What is this, right? But, yeah. Right. Well, I think the natural rubber is really important because of the research you guys have done about interaction.
Those emissions that are responsible for raising cancer, more like the same
But it's a bit like Jamie Critic said in the film, you know, he says if you go into a surf shop, there's this distinct chemical smell. It's the antithesis of the smell you get when you go surfing. And it's right, you know, if you go to a surf shop, it smells chemically. It's like, yeah, it's the glory ring.
So I think we're pretty much at time. Just to wrap up, will you continue to edit the film as information comes to light? Because things are changing rapidly, or is the film done and you have a future film in the thoughts? Or
Yeah.
what next?
So once the film's basically locked, it's done because you then spend a huge amount of money on your post-production, so you have to grade the film and the score's laid on top, and you know, it's like the film is 100% locked in. So we can change the end slides. So if things change, we can change the end slides. But yeah, I mean, we all just joke about it. We just go, we could make a film about making the film because some of the stories people just literally wouldn't believe. You know, some of the roadblocks we've had, like.
And I mean, your experience here,
Yeah.
right? I mean, everything we've learned, like the fallout from the film is almost more fascinating. Like, I don't know how has it impacted you, Hub, being part of this story? Like, have you had pushback from friends and colleagues?
For sure.
Yeah, I imagine you would have, right?
Yeah, taking some shit, for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, we've all eaten some shit in different ways up here. I mean, Sarah just running massive waves.
All right, I think that is a wrap. Thank you so much for coming and coming out with me.